welcome back to the Everything Service Management podcast. So today we are going to be focusing on what is quite a unique market, Ireland. It's the only remaining English-speaking market within the EU, heavily influenced by the UK, but Ireland has its own set of very interesting characteristics. So today I'm joined by Mark and Mike. So Mark, over to you. Maybe a quick introduction for the audience.
Hi everyone, I'm Mark Twomey, the CEO of Xcession. Really looking forward to discussing what we are doing in Ireland and introducing Mike Lillis a bit more.
Thanks, Mark. And so many of the audience will know you, Mark, but Mike, not so much. So a quick intro from yourself, if that's okay.
Sure, Sunil, no problem. My name is Mike Lillis. I'm the country manager at Xcession. I have been operating the Irish market for over 20 years, but the majority of that was actually in the Microsoft space, 15, 16 years, but more recently operating in the ITSM space. So my role is to bring a lot of the experience that Xcession have borne in the UK, ironically through Irish resources in some cases, and to bring those resources and their experience to bear, hopefully paired nicely with my experience in the Irish market from a commercial positioning relationships perspective. So I'm in a role a couple of months. It's been exciting. We've got plenty done already, but lots more to do.
Very good. Well, listen, it's great to have you both in Xcession, but also on the podcast. So let's kick off with a question to you, Mike, with all the experience that you have of working in Ireland. So what is it that you think makes the Irish market different to other countries, particularly the UK and I suppose the other major EU economies?
Yeah, I think the common things remain, Sunil. So relationship-based, not selling, but I would say relationship-based delivery, because there's not many relationships that bear the test of a really bad implementation, right? So with that comes, and I'm speaking purely in the technology market, obviously, Sunil, but with that, you need to be able to build a level of trust. So there are people I've worked with in the Irish market, both in my team and on client side for 10, 15 years. And every relationship is going to go through that bump or bumps in the road. But I think it's the ones that roll their sleeves up and make sure that you deliver the value you promised at the outset that lasts. So that's the common thing I think that lasts in every market. But where I think things are unique here in Ireland is, for a long time, we would have kind of lagged behind the UK in terms of statutory regulation, 5 to 10 years, piece of legislation, let's say, relating to mental health might come up in the UK, and lo and behold, in 3 to 5 years' time, it would arrive as a bill in Ireland and come into statute. But I really think Ireland now, along with the EU, are starting to spearhead an awful lot of the thought-leading statutory legislation. I mean, a really good one at the moment now in the EU is the resharing of images, right? So, without permission. So that's one of the ones that I would have seen the EU lead. And there's a trend of that. And we'll talk a little bit about the EU AI Act and all of those good things. But I think that's where Ireland is becoming a leader in the public sector. From a commercial perspective, obviously, we have a very attractive corporation tax rate here compared to the rest of the EU, much to the jealousy of a lot of our EU compatriots. But you see an awful lot of, FDI here. So that you have a large conglomerate of globally headquartered organizations, or EMEA headquarters for large US orgs. And you don't have that in many other states, to be honest, Sunil. So I think they're the real unique pieces that jump out for me, along with the table stakes of trust.
It's really interesting, isn't it, how Ireland is now increasingly seen as the beachhead for American organizations that want to make the move into the EU market. It has obviously the benefit of being within the European Union, obviously the sort of native language,
of course,
American Irish language, sort of compatibility.
And there's even, there's even the historical roots in the States with Ireland when we had the famine. So, there is a huge Irish diaspora over there. So, I think in a way, right, Americans like the Irish inherently. An awful lot of the firemen, policemen, builders in the early 1900s came from Ireland. And I think there's a lot of families who have good ties over there. So I do think they do generally like doing business with the Irish, which helps things a bit, right? There's a good relationship there. But on a professional basis, it's a very skilled workforce, a skilled English-speaking workforce. Ireland would be known very well for its very strong university circuit. And I think that plays into the professional layer above the relationship layer as to why, obviously, alongside the fiscal benefits of corporation tax and all that good stuff, but no point having a great corporation tax if you can't have a workforce that can deliver on it. So that's why you see these huge houses in Sandyford for Microsoft, Google, AWS. But it's great. Look, it's fantastic for Irish employment in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, there's a slot for you on our sister channel, Xcession, everything. The rest is history or something like that. We can come back to it.
I don't have that deep knowledge. It just popped into my head as we spoke about it. I won't start talking about potato plant or anything.
Mark, I guess actually, what's interesting about you is obviously you grew up from Ireland, you grew up in Ireland, but actually you were somebody that did leave Ireland in many ways to go and work in the UK, and then you've been, I think, to Australia and other places as well. Perhaps you follow some of the route that Mike's talked about there. So now you're back and being much more proactive within Ireland. I mean, do you recognise some of the characteristics?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So what we see in Ireland is that when I left Ireland, I actually left Ireland in 2001. Okay. So I went to Australia, and then when I went to Australia, I spent 3 years working there, learned a bit more, came back to the UK and learned an awful lot more, and spent 14 years working, all the time in the UK, coming back and forth from Ireland, etc. But what we learned at the time, I suppose, from when I was working in the UK, was that there was a lot more intensity to work than there was maybe when I was in Australia or even in Dublin before I left, right? What you see now is that level of intensity to work, right, is as high, if not higher, to me in Ireland than it was in the UK in the noughties and the teens. And then you start to see that link into the economies of this. So the economy in Ireland was probably starting to boom. We went through a boom. It was a bit of a crazy boom in the noughties in Ireland. A lot of people have scars of it, but I was not here for it, but probably the good thing. But what you see now is that the remnants of that is that we still have a very, very positive economy. Like, we have more people coming to Ireland than we have leaving, and that's in my lifetime that never happened, right? So we probably have what I would say is a skills shortage of people in Ireland, and therefore we have skilled people coming in. We have a huge digital economy, all right, and we are probably seen as through our links to the US and the foreign direct investment there, plus the companies that are coming out of Ireland. Yeah, there are some really interesting companies coming out of Ireland, particularly in areas like food and pharma and biotech. So, you know what, it's really, really exciting, right? But what we think at the moment, Dick, is that because Ireland's I think that one of the key things to Ireland is that it's an English-speaking country in the EU with a highly skilled workforce, to read what Mike said, okay? And that makes it a really good place to come and do business, because you have access to good people, and good people are actually moving to Ireland because they want to work for these companies in Ireland, right? There's good education. People are moving into Ireland. Their kids are getting well educated, as Mike mentioned. There's so much good going on that, it's a really good place to be, I think.
It does unfortunately make the UK sound a little bit like it's the one lagging behind. Many of the good things you've talked about there are challenges over here. But listen, let's come back to the whole idea of a highly skilled workforce, but a shortage nevertheless. We'll come back to that if that's okay. I have heard an anecdote, right, that buyers of services and products in Ireland have an aversion to the person that turns up in the meeting room with their wheel-on suitcase. Yes. Someone told me that's something that's a bit too familiar. So I guess, look, we're playing on the idea of kind of trust right here, aren't we? People that understand the market. So And Mike, you talked about delivery, right? You don't get away with a bad implementation. So look, as a seller, right, as somebody that goes into the customer environment, Mike, what does that sort of mean? How do you think about it, right? What do you do differently because you're aware of this
Yeah.
level of
Yeah.
trust that you're building up?
Well, I think there's a couple of layers to it, Sunil, right? I think the first one is if I'm a client in Ireland and I'm thinking past the selling stage into when there is a big issue that needs to be addressed, who can be here in the same working day or tomorrow, right? And that's common that's not Ireland. That's just a common client ask, right? Whatever geography you're operating in. And a client doesn't want to hear, I have to book a flight and I can be there on Tuesday, right? If it's Friday, they may want you there tomorrow, Saturday. And I think as important as having the skilled boots on the ground, it's to be able to pick up the phone to the CEO and say, I'd like to meet you tomorrow because this is serious, right? And Mark is only up the road. As much as they may want to, they may have gone through 4 or 5 iterations of escalation to me. They may want to talk to the man with the checkbook, right? And there is no point waiting a week to work around his diary to get him on site for that. So I think that, and it's more about the client knowing they have that, Sunil, than actually having to overtly say it. When you arrive into the room and could we do another discovery? For example, you're in the early stages and you run out of time with a client on a Tuesday. And they say, look, I'm busy tomorrow, but could you come back on Thursday? And most people would say, look, I'll catch you on Teams. We'll just come back on site and get it done in half the time for half the hassle in terms of just how you get through things face to face a lot quicker. All of the other things that inherently come with that. So, your ability to understand exactly what the client needs when you see them and you read their body language and their tone versus on video, they're two different animals. And look, the anecdote around the wheelie case, it's not only about flying in and not being local. It's also about, am I going to be dealing with you all the way through this, or am I going to be dealing with versions of you and having to tell the same thing to multiple people different ways and different times, versus I'm building a rapport of knowledge with this individual. And outside of the commercial side, the strongest relationships will probably be built in delivery with individuals. So I think they're the layers, Sunil, to building that trust. And the anecdote is always the wheelie case, right? We've had clients say to us,
Yeah.
So, and that's no disrespect to people who put in a lot of travel in their day, but a client just wants, a local neck to choke sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it's so true, right? If you're a victim of the wheelie case, right, then it must start to get on your nerves a little bit. So Mark, I guess one of the unique things about an organization like Xcession with a local presence there, just to play on what Mike's talked about there, is, we work with different vendors and many of them are, they're UK or American vendors. And the inevitability is that vendor is going to have people in the local market in some cases they don't, and certainly they'll have huge teams of product or marketing or sales management, etc., that might sit outside of the local Irish market. As a sort of, the role of Xcession, being present gives you the ability to channel that diaspora of vendor people, right, through a single focal point for the customer, doesn't it? You can offer that to your customer and say, don't talk to them, I'm here, I'll talk to you and represent.
Exactly, Sunil. And I think what Mike actually, spoke about that quite a lot there in relation to how we work with clients. But what we're seeing and we feel ourselves is that if we can lead on engagements and be the face of that solution or vendor to the clients in Ireland, it's a far better experience by dealing with us locally, with people like Mike and Brian and other people in our team who are local, understand what these people want and need, right? Can empathize with them better, probably. So, we think that we can actually lead on engagements for the vendors that we work with, and really drive that out. Yeah, we're seeing that already. I think even in the first couple of months, aren't we, Mike?
Yeah, we are. And I think the other thing about that as well, lads, is I think we all know that once the relationship is built, you don't have to be on site all the time. So, like if I speak to a client on day one about what they needed, it's generally a very close iteration of that on day 180, you know. But if it's not me, or if I'm not present there to understand exactly what they want in the initial stages, it's very hard to keep that. So, and we're finding it, particularly dealing with, you know, you spoke of multiple vendors, Sunil. Even the ability to just go and meet the guys in ServiceNow in Dublin, just to share some of the pain points we're seeing from the clients, so that we can work together on what the solutions might be. I think that's really important as well, because, again, you know, it's different if you're trying to sell into a local market from another geography. It's very hard, regardless of how much time you spend face to face, if you're coming in and out of the engagement from abroad. And it's the same going into the UK, Sunil, right? You know, it can be difficult if you're, you know, a European vendor coming in and out. I mean, I had a particular client in Luxembourg in a previous life, and there were only flights on Tuesday and Thursday from Dublin. So sometimes you're just actually, you're restricted by the logistics of where you are as well.
And I bet they didn't even offer business class, did they, Mike?
Not in that engagement, I'm afraid. I was flying over a lot more than I felt I should have had to.
So, look, so, you know, we're sat in front of a customer, right? We've got this trust that's being built up. How do we change the dynamic, right, in terms of what we deliver, right? Where does the trust hit the commercial model? You know, what do you think about that, Mike?
Well, the one observation, and I actually operated in the UK myself for about 5 years when I left college. I went over around the same time as you, Mark, worked in London for about 5 years for a large investment bank. And Ireland is a very outcome-based buying community. So the vast majority of the work that you'll find yourself doing is fixed price with deliverables. So the trust comes from being able to, you know, and it was funny, a guy I used to work with, he said, just give them what they want to buy and do it well, and you'll do well. You know, you don't have to do all the bells and whistles, but if you basically give the client what they ask for, it will go a long way to building a solid relationship. And when you do price on an outcome basis, Sunil, it allows that. I've always, while commercially time and materials based engagements are easier, I always find in a competitive market, which the Microsoft one was and the ITSM one is, I always prefer a battle card based on outcomes versus rates, because you just end up in a race to the bottom, and the whole conversation around value, outcomes, ROI gets lost. And when things don't go well, it's fine when things go well. Everything's fine when things go well. But when it doesn't go so well, you know, it's very hard to say, not who's at fault, but how do you repair from a partner perspective something in a T&M relationship? Do you say you're just going to spend more time on it? Who's going to pay for that? Right? That always becomes the issue. Whereas in fixed price, it's simple. You paid for a house, we're going to give you a house. And if it doesn't have the 4 bedrooms we said, we're going to have to put another bedroom on. You know, it's a lot clearer, in my view. And the Irish buying community, particularly in the public sector and probably in the vast majority of the private sector, the larger global orgs tend to just take in teams of people because they have their own teams of people that can manage them. But I would say 70 to 80% of the buying community in Ireland relies on that outcome-based sell.
It's interesting. So, Mark, you're the guy with the checkbook. So how do you feel about that sort of fixed price, fixed outcome service?
I am also a believer in it. I think over the years in Xcession, we've also done a lot of, and the majority of our work has been fixed price, right? But we're moving into an era of far more outcome-based solution selling and solution execution and delivery, I think is what I would say. Obviously, we work with ServiceNow, and their big thing is outcome-based delivery now. Everyone who works in this ecosystem will be aligned to that moving forward. It's a huge area. So where partners like ourselves have to, even though we may have done fixed price in the past, we still have to transform further to be able to, you know, work with our clients to be able to deliver the outcomes they want post go live. Yeah. So go live is now nearly the start, not the end. Yeah. So that becomes a bit of a challenge, and lots of people it worries lots of people, I would say, but we have to embrace this, and we live in an era of change, and how projects have been delivered over the years are starting to change now, and we have to embrace that. And those who embrace it will survive and win, and those who don't will probably wither and die.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and look, we will inevitably come on to a conversation about AI and agentic AI, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that the sort of cost plus human labor model that we have traditionally worked in is going to come to some form of a close, isn't it? So how quickly, we're not sure, but it's on its way. So Mark, just carry on with you, if that's okay. So let's just shift the focus a little bit to I guess some of the technology leadership, right, that Ireland is showing. So you mentioned a couple of things, or Mike did, I think, that there's large tech firms are domiciled in Ireland for entry into the UK and the EU market, and there are some attractive tax benefits there. But I suppose what it's doing is it's shifting Ireland from being a follower to a leader from a technology perspective as well. So maybe you can give us some examples of how you're seeing that actually play out.
So what I think we're seeing from there, Sunil, is that the impact of the tech firms in Ireland has led to a massive raise of the talent bar that exists across both Irish people and people coming into Ireland, right? So we're now working in a market where the best in class people are being educated and trained by these tech firms, right? People are coming in from all over Europe, America, even places like India, where really, really smart people are moving into Ireland. They're driving the level of competency within Ireland, and from that, then it spawns out, innovation in areas that you wouldn't normally see, right? So, I think this creates then a massive kind of ecosystem within Ireland, which is continuing to grow, right? And then, we have a lot of the biggest tech firms in the world have their European headquarters over here, right? So Irish people are very, very, very kind of tech savvy now. They understand technology, right? It's part of the EU. Ireland is actually has the presidency of the EU from the 1st of July this year. So it's and that's the same. It kind of coincides at the same time when the EUA Act comes into enforcement from August, right? Now it's been watered down slightly with the omnibus, but there are still elements of this that are required, and that impacts not just Irish organisations, it impacts European organisations, and in the UK it also impacts them because they're going to be if they are using AI systems and working with the EU market, they're also have to adhere to that as well. So it's quite interesting. Like there's a lot of leadership going on in Ireland from that perspective, but I think there's also leadership in relation to how they're embracing technology. And what we're seeing is that, I read a recent report there from Trinity and Microsoft about the state of AI in Ireland, right? And enterprise AI in Ireland. And it seems that we're outpacing a lot of other organizations, right? But what's also interesting is when you break it down into that report, what actually it's bringing back is most organizations are using AI or planning to use AI. So I think 92% of enterprises in Ireland will be using AI within this year, is what they say, right? But the ones who are getting the value from it are the ones who actually are putting the proper operating model and governance around how they use AI. And I would be on the IOD. I'm a member of the IOD in Ireland, and it's a key message that keeps popping up in the IOD this year is governance for AI. So it's on everyone's radar. It's quite interesting. I think it's going to become a leader in this space because of where it sits in the EU, and also because of how we can actually work across all these different technology firms. I think it's very good on standards, if that makes sense. And the EU definitely leads on standards, in my opinion, and Ireland will then start to, lead, I think, across Europe in these areas, in my opinion. Right.
Absolutely. Can we just touch a little bit? We said we couldn't get away with not talking about agentic AI, but Mike, so you mentioned it before, right? Highly skilled people, yet a skilled shortage, even though you have, yes, to Mark's point, immigration coming in to fill some of that skills gap. What's the answer here?
So Ireland's at nearly full employment now. And while that's great for the economy, it's difficult in terms of growth. And even as an example, I do a lot of work with Green HQ, who are they're funded by Enterprise Ireland in Southeast Ireland, and they provide a lot of funding, place to work, and mentorship to startups in the region. And you can even see it on the smaller scale, where obviously you have the larger organizations who are scaling and are using AI to handle the more labor intensive tasks and having their skilled workforce doing the heavier tasks. But I see it with a lot of the startups I work with here, that they're using AI to, keep the cost base low in that early phase where they don't have a huge amount of money coming in. But that brings its own challenges, right? Particularly for the bigger orgs, because you don't know necessarily. I mean, the big issue I would have, having gone through the GDPR phase prior to the EU Act, is, I mean, you don't know what your people are using AI for. Is there PII getting out into the ether? Is there personal work being done which is unsuitable? We all know that we like it to help schedule our tasks across our business and personal lives, but is it being used for other things that you don't know? And I think most importantly then, because Ireland has the EU presidency this time round, we may see the regulator a little bit more eager to enforce, just from a leadership perspective here in Ireland. So that could drive some activity in terms of, audit trailing, regulators coming in and checking what's going on in accordance with, I know it's a little bit more watered down, but they could try to make an example of somebody because we have the presidency. So I think all of that leans into what Mark was talking about, Sunil. So I think it's a very interesting time. I think it's very important that the proper guardrails are in place.
So Mark, listen, let's turn this back to you a little bit. So if you're sitting in front of a new customer, an existing customer that's in Ireland, and you're looking at these new acts that are coming in, you've mentioned the EU AI Act, what would you be saying to them? What should they be thinking about? What should they be doing today?
So what I would say to organizations is, in relation to AI, is to start to look at implementing an operating model to enable them to run, manage, control AI in the organization, right? The EU AI Act, like I said, it provides guidance for really good practices to be applied to how you manage AI across your organization. It's not there to be seen as something that you need to, essentially that it's a hindrance. It's there for the good of everyone, I think, right? Where I'd look at that, first of all, is like, what are your AI assets? In your organization, what assets are you using today from an AI perspective? What models are you using? What skills are you using? What data are they touching? Yeah. So what systems and data are accessed by AI? These are key things to actually start to document now. Also in that context, have you applied a risk assessment to these AI tools? Who actually is approving them when changes need to be made, right? What controls and attestations are in place to maintain and monitor those AI systems? And is there an ongoing monitoring of performance in relation to AI? There are slightly different challenges with performance around things like hallucinations, adherence to guardrails that you need to measure when it comes to AI systems. And then how do you evidence and share this compliance? Because, for example, in Ireland, the Office of AI in Ireland is going to be set up this year. That will be the body that's reporting into the EU from a regulatory perspective. They will become knocking on the door of every single organization in Ireland within the next couple of years. So this is what's going to be required. This is what you need to start doing now. I also think that this is like, when I say you're standing up an operating system, but what you're standing up really is you're standing up a management system for how you govern and manage AI in your organization, right? What we're seeing so far from reports and some analysis being done by various different firms is that organizations who actually implement these processes and management systems and operating systems for AI are getting far more value from AI than those who do it in what I call a reasonably ad hoc manner, right? So I read a report recently that said that it's around the Trinity report also, that 15% of organizations had no policy for AI in place at all, even though 92% of them will be using AI this year. It doesn't make sense. There's a gap there, right? I think people need to start, assess this. It's a new world we live in, and I think those organizations who actually start to measure, monitor, apply risk, govern and secure their AI systems are the ones which will get more value from it in the future, because they're the ones who are putting the time and effort into ensuring that it delivers value, but also that it can be measured in an ongoing manner, right? So that's why we do now straight away. Every organization, come speak to me, because this is a really subject that I really am quite passionate about.
Yeah. It's really fascinating, and I guess if you sort of cast your mind back to 30 years ago, we had the dawning of the first ITIL framework, didn't we? And it wasn't a hard and fast set of rules, right? It was a set of guidance and best practice around how to manage technology services in an organization. I think that's what we're looking at today, isn't it? It's a set of guidance, but there is some regulatory steel that sits behind it, and that is important, isn't it? Because I think the way in which AI can and will impact everybody's lives requires control, doesn't it?
I think one point, Sunil, just to tag on to Mark's piece, a brief one. It's interesting to see that so few people have policy implemented behind the AI usage, but the regulator will kind of look at the policy and go, okay, not whatever, but they'll go, okay, I now need to see the proof. Where is the asset list? Where is the register? What are you doing to govern it? What are you doing to make sure that the register is refreshed on a regular basis? And that's what we saw with GDPR as well. I was going to say I'm a bit too young for the ITIL dawn, Sunil, but I didn't want to do that to you. But I think the regulator will go straight past the policy, folks. I think they'll go, great, that's a good start, but where's the proof in the pudding? You're absolutely right. I think there will be steel in this one.
And look, I think the point of this podcast is to look at the Irish market, right? And actually, what you guys are saying here is that in the local Irish market, with the focus of the EU presidency, expect there to be some attention here. What a great opportunity to lead. There will be some mistakes. You learn from those, and actually that becomes an exportable commodity, doesn't it, to other markets, right, who are going to follow.
It's not the fact that the EU AI Act is coming in, Sunil. It's more to do with the fact that a bill is going through Irish Parliament that's going to make it enforceable and actionable. So I think Mark's right. I think it's a good time to prepare, but it's an even better time to just roll the sleeves up and have yourself prepped for it expect the auditor to come in.
Brilliant. So Mike, Mark, listen, thank you so much for the conversation today. I think that what we wanted to do for the audience listening was to highlight perhaps some of the unique nature that the Irish market is in, and the fantastic opportunities, right, that it finds itself in, with great skills, great companies, nice corporation tax benefits, but also really now starting to lead in so much of the technology advancements moving forward. So I think we've done that really, really well. For anyone else out there that is interested in this content, subscribe. Thank you ever so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for hosting, Sunil. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. My first Xcession podcast. Looking forward to many more.
Fantastic. And Mark, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunil, and thanks very much, Mike, for joining us. It's been really, really interesting, and I'm really excited about everything we're going to do over here in Ireland and continue to grow. Yeah.
And thank you to everyone for joining us today.